Welcome, y'all. 3 count commentary. Smackdown was on early. I had a day off work, so I bootlegged it. So this will probably be coming out later the same day on Friday, March the 21st. Let's get into the main event first. We're also going to talk about the roast of WrestleMania and the official announcement of Phoenix, I suppose. But everybody already knew that, so there's no need to get too deep into it. Let's start with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and CM Punk. They essentially agreed to have the triple threat match that we've all been dreading. Well, that I've been dreading. You guys probably are very excited. On the other hand, I'm going to try to stay awake during this thing. So they didn't say anything of note, really, in this promo segment. Roman Reigns said that CM Punk screwed him at the Royal Rumble, so he screwed Punk. Then he said that Seth Rollins tried to assassinate your tribal chief. And then he tried to kill Seth Rollins at the Madison Square Garden. Rollins came out, says that CM Punk is dangerous to the future of the business. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means. And that Roman should have let Rollins finish him. Then said that it's not about Punk. It's about the two of them. And it's time to add another chapter to their story. And then CM Punk came out, said the Royal Rumble was every man for himself, said that he saved the bloodline during the War Games, and then thanked Paul for bringing Roman out, and then he attacked him. So we had another pull-apart brawl, which was, oh my God, how many pull-apart brawls do we need exactly? Anyway, I'm not thrilled about this. I've been really pitching a bitch about this Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk triple threat match. There's not much more to it, from what I said. It's clearly, even in the setup, once again, Seth Rollins is just standing there watching Punk and Roman fight, and then he just decides to jump in. Is there literally any other more symbolic visual than Roman and Punk rolling around on the ground and Rollins just standing there and I need to get involved? Because that's all he's been. He's been riding somebody's coattails for the last 2 or 3 years now. It's embarrassing, humiliating even, that he is not allowed to have his own spotlight feud. He instead gets shoehorned in with other guys because Triple H is too goddamn lazy to come up with another storyline or push another guy so that Rollins can have a singles match. Instead, we have to have our CM Punk versus Roman Reigns match completely ruined by Seth Rollins. Just like we had our Roman Reigns versus The Rock match ruined with Cody Rhodes. Triple H has had 2 WrestleManias without Vince being around, and he's whiffed Roman Reigns booking both times. I mean, both times. It's dumb. It's really dumb. Look, I'm pretty sure Roman gets paid the same regardless, but it's a glaring issue that this match is a triple threat, which, again, this is the difference between somebody who's friends with the talent, and this is why Vince being detached from the talent is a positive. People say, okay, Triple H being a former talent is a good thing because he recognizes, time off and, injury time and family and all that stuff, which is true. But then there are times when he was the talent and, he was friendly with certain guys. He had certain peers that he liked more than others, certain other talents that he liked more than others. And having shared a locker room with some of these people, he does give them preferential treatment. And Seth Rollins is one of those guys. Again, Triple H has wrestled Seth Rollins personally. Considered him almost like, a mentee of Triple H. Was the first NXT champion. He doesn't want to put this guy on the wayside. Vince would probably have kicked Seth Rollins down the card wrestling the Intercontinental Champion or in some throwaway mid-card match. He would not be shoehorning him into this match. He's not needed. He is not needed in this match. I can't even think of a good reason why he's needed. I see that tickets have stalled, and when it comes to WrestleMania, everybody's kind of grumbling about the whole John Cena thing, but people don't know what night John Cena is going to main event, even though everybody's pretty sure it's going to be night 2. Night 1's main event is likely going to be this. And this is what they done. Instead of giving us Punk versus Roman, they decided to give us a triple threat match because they think more is better. I don't get it. Who cares? It's so uncreative. It's so bland. You know, they each one of them pointing at the WrestleMania sign. There's no spice, no pizzazz to this thing. I hate this. Let's just move on. I'm going to skip it. I'm going to skip some of these other issues. Let's just talk about Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte, because this was the one that I cringed at the most upon seeing it. Usually I go in some kind of order, but I'm just going to skip. I'm going to skip around, all right? I'm trying something different. So Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte had a face-off segment where Tiffany Stratton got absolutely devoured. She got eaten alive and run over with a steam train by Charlotte. So Charlotte says that she wasn't buying into the Tiffany Stratton hype, and that she finally showed her something last week when she jumped off the top of that stage. Then she said that she picked Tiffany because Tiffany came out and basically begged her for it, that she's pathetic, she finds her undeserving of the championship, undeserving of her time. Then Tiffany tried to respond, and Charlotte just kept going. Tiffany tried to respond again. Charlotte interrupted her. Tiffany tried to respond again. Charlotte ran her over again. And then she dared Tiffany to say something. Tiffany would say, well, you were one of my biggest supporters. It's so disappointing that... And then Charlotte cut her off again. And I was just looking at this like, oh, this is so cringy. This is so bad. Tiffany got nothing out of this. Absolutely, positively nothing. Absolutely nothing. She got crushed. The Austin theory, what happened to him and Roman and him and Cena, it happened to Tiffany. They setting up these young folks for failure. Usually when these promos are put together, they're somewhat 50-50. But what they're doing is they're making the young talent just basically sit there and get steamrolled. Like, whoever produced this segment couldn't, direct Charlotte to let Tiffany get some stuff in. Like, this is the verbal equivalent of like when William Regal put Bill Goldberg in a front face lock. Like, he can't really get out of it. Tiffany isn't really ready for this kind of back and forth yet. And she knew that too. She talked about it when she was near the end of her time in NXT. She said she wanted to stay in NXT. This is right after she feuded with Becky Lynch. She wanted to stay in NXT because she wanted to work on her promos. And they called her up anyway. And then she got super over, and they were forced to go with it. They weren't really thrilled about it, but they were forced to go with it. They had plenty of time to put her in dueling promos where she could go back and forth with somebody who's relatively intense on the mic or whatever to prepare her for this kind of situation. And instead, they decided it's sink or swim. Bloop. And usually I like that. Usually I don't mind sink or swim. But when somebody has potential and you could tell that they're damn nervous, it really defeats the purpose to have her look bad. And this entire feud has just been Tiffany looking bad. She either gets beat up and left at Charlotte's feet, or a segment like this where she gets tongue-tied and she's not sure what to say. This is the weak part of her game, and, talking. But again, Tiffany is like, 24, 25 years old or something like that. She'll get the hang of it. But ultimately, I'm trying not to have a persecutory, suspicious thing about what's going on with Tiffany, and I'll give you why I said that. It was late last night or early the morning of Thursday or something like that. Triple H put out a tweet about this very match. He says, 2 generations of WWE's biggest stars and both in their prime. This match isn't about past versus present. It's all about the now. Now, understand what he's saying here. The natural story is that Charlotte's time is up. It's Tiffany's time now, right? That these two people are sitting here and they're looking like Charmander and Charizard, and that's the natural story that you would want to tell. But he doesn't want to say that Charlotte is old, right? And nobody believes that Charlotte is in her physical prime. The last 3 or 4 years has featured Charlotte being out more than 6 months at a time. Like, her and Randy Orton have had like a whole lot of time off the last few years. And it is what it is. It's either injuries or her boobs are popping or something, like she had to go get another face or whatever the case may be. They are definitely avoiding the concept of Charlotte looking old. And what we see here is the only thing Tiffany got out for real was that she was the only one who can take Charlotte's crown. And then Charlotte responded by saying, "You are lucky to have a job when you're my age, kid." And I'm looking like, what? What is that all about? What's that? I'm dumbfounded by this. Instead of telling, again, the most simple story, we're going to let Charlotte just kick her in the nuts and kick her like a dust ball all over the place, give her nothing, and then what? Like when they actually have the match, Tiffany's going to be in great physical condition. She's going to be able to do the moves and everything, unless they decide to embarrass her there too. But this entire feud has been putting her behind the 8 ball, which would be fine if she was an underdog babyface. But she's not. She's like, her character literally should not be portrayed this way. But this is what they're doing. And they made sure that Charlotte was the heel so that it would make sense that she would do something like this. But to me, I was like, man, they are really doing something. They're really doing a number on Tiffany right now. She's getting hazed. She's getting hazed, and she's going to either come out of this thing completely mentally busted or stronger than ever. One or the other. But I definitely am fearing that she's going to end up like Austin Theory. And that's really what I fear, is that Tiffany Stratton was brought into WWE right after Triple H left NXT. As soon as, Vince and Bruce and all those guys took over, and they brushed out everybody, the Garganos and EO and Candice, all those people got kicked out. Tiffany was brought in, I think, within a month. So she represents, much like Braun Breaker represents, much like, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, all the people who have been, just had the floor mopped with them so far since Triple H took over. She represents that. And it seems to me that they're going to do this match, but it's going to be probably an Austin Theory situation where even if Tiffany wins, she's not going to get anything out of it. And you can see in the feud, they're not booking her to be Charlotte's equal. And if they did not produce this situation, or somebody let her get treated like this, because look, this is a sit down, produce promo. If they did not want to air this, I don't know if it was live or not, maybe it was. But in any event, whatever happened that this promo made her look that bad, it feels like it was on purpose. And if it wasn't, heavens to Betsy, somebody needs to go have a talk with Charlotte about burying Tiffany. But that's if it was completely and totally Charlotte's call and she just decided to do that. But if it was a situation where it was booked this way, you got to ask why. You're going to have to ask some questions. But I was dumbfounded by that. And there's not much else to be said about it. I mean, Tiffany's going to have to hold on with both hands, because she's in for quite the ride for WrestleMania. Especially this is her first WrestleMania match. They're really out to put the screws to her. The opening segment was Randy Orton and Kevin Owens. I didn't care about this at all because I don't like Kevin Owens' fat ass. Look, the only thing it really boiled down to was Kevin Owens tried to apologize, said that Randy Orton didn't deserve the power driver. Randy says that he didn't care. He doesn't believe that apology. Shove it up your ass. And then said that he's glad that Kevin Owens dropped him on his head because now he hears the voices and he's going to kick him in the head at WrestleMania. So then there's that. I don't care. I don't care about Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton. We'll see if Randy Orton actually takes one bump in that match. The Street Profits came out to really bad music. This is the second time, maybe the third, that they've changed their theme song. They've gotten Def Rebelled 2 or 3 times. Remember, they got Def Rebelled a year or so ago when they was with Lashley. They got a whole new theme that was trash. And people complained. They bitched and moaned, and they turned it back to their NXT theme. And now they've changed it again. They had a celebratory situation here, and it got interrupted by Legado del Fantasma, Pretty Deadly. Legado del Fantasma ended up in a match where they lost, of course. Pretty Deadly are the number 1 contenders. We'll get that match, I think, next week. And DIY has said it will help them if they get a title shot when Pretty Deadly wins. And, of course, the Motor City Machine Guns have overheard that, and they said they want to fight DIY. So they're going to end up having some kind of fatal 4-way thing. I don't care about this. I feel bad for the Street Profits. They're just in a bad situation. It's a terrible tag team division. It's so goddamn shallow. It's literally 4 teams. Even in the New Generation era, there was more than 4 teams. Like, when people say, like, oh, man, Vince hated tag teams. I hate to keep bringing up Vince, but I can't help it. People kept saying Vince hated tag teams. There was always more than 4. Here, there's only 4 fucking teams on the entire... This is a 3-hour show. There's only 4 teams. What are you thinking? What are you doing? Next, Jade Cargill. She said she was going to show Liv what's up. She's going to kick Liv's ass, and that's going to be a prelude to what she's going to do to Naomi. This led to Liv Morgan versus Jade Cargill, the match. I was cringing at the idea that the Italians have created what they call a Mona Lisa or Mona Liva or Liv Mona Lisa or something, where it's basically the Mona Lisa with Liv Morgan's face on it. And there were Italians in the street basically worshiping and praying to it, and everybody thought that was funny. And then the painting again appeared on SmackDown as it was posted to the wall, and everybody saw it. Despite her name, I don't think she's Italian. Like, her name is like Gianna Dario or something like that, but I don't think she's Italian. She's from New Jersey, which, raises the likelihood of her being Italian. But I don't think she's Italian. But the Italian males have a real... They're ranking pretty high on simp factor. The plus 500 on simping. And whoever drew that thing is plus 1,500. Well, there's some cringe dudes. There's some really cringe guys. There's some really cringe guys, man. Anyway, the match itself was fine. The idea that Jade Cargill would likely dominate the much smaller Liv Morgan, for some reason they abandoned that. Of course, there was a lot of Raquel distractions. Eventually, Naomi hit Jade Cargill with the belt. It was followed by Oblivion, and Liv Morgan actually pinned Jade Cargill, giving Jade Cargill her first pinfall defeat in WWE. And I was sort of stunned that happened. One, Jade Cargill being booked to lose a random singles match. Her first singles match after she's supposed to be super angry and pissed off. She's supposed to be like, the Hulk. She's supposed to be tearing through people because she's on a revenge tour, much like, Liv was. This win doesn't do anything for Liv. She's not a singles act anymore. She's a tag team wrestler now. Well, at least for right now. I know she's like a former women's champion and everything. But it's not like Liv needed to win. This match could have easily ended in disqualification, where Naomi attacks Jade with the belt from behind. They do the big beat 'em up afterwards, and Jade did not have to get pinned. The idea that they pinned Jade says something to me. Like, there's a reason they did that. After she's been in the company for over a year, her first pinfall loss was in the middle of the show in Italy. After fresh off of her not being on TV in a while. This is her first singles match. And even if you say, well, it was supposed to further her story with Naomi. Yeah, but again, you could have done that with a disqualification. Why are you not protecting Jade anymore? Leads some credence to the idea that Jade might have heat. They're adding fuel to that fire. That Jade might have a little bit of heat, and maybe they're going to have her do this job as a sign of goodwill to test her attitude to see if she's willing to do it. But and after the match, Naomi, who looks absolutely fantastic, by the way, she's covered in caution tape. It reminded me a lot of Owen Hart's gear when he joined the Nation. It reminded me a lot of that. And she basically attacked Jade Cargill, beat her up. You know, she even hit a heat seeker, which is like one of the moves MJF does, on Jade Cargill. It looked pretty cool. Naomi looks great. Naomi looks like a badass. Jade, got to show some vulnerability. I don't like that Jade lost, but there's not much you can do about that. It's just weird booking. Hopefully, if you were going to have Jade lose, I guess it can't be to Naomi because her and Naomi have a thing, but the entire booking of the story, in my mind, was based off of Jade Cargill being, a dominant physical force. And it seems like they're not going that way anymore. That she's going to be going 50-50 with everybody now, which is not to her strength. That's not really her strength. But it is what it is, man. Triple H knows, hey, he knows better than me. He also knows better than me when it comes to Zelina Vega, who also has a new theme song. I don't understand it. I barely even heard it, but I don't understand why they changed her theme. She lost to Piper Niven. Of course, the storyline going into this is that she wants to fight for the U.S. title. She has to beat Piper Niven to do it. And then she just lost to Piper Niven. Now, it was a 3-on-1 situation where Chelsea Green interfered and Alba Fire interfered. But look at these two people, right? Piper Niven has got 180 pounds on Zelina Vega and at least 3 inches in height. I mean, literally, it would take 3 Zelina Vegas to match 1 Piper Niven. That's how voluminous the ass of Piper Niven is. And last week, I was like, it wouldn't make sense for Zelina to win that match. And then they decided, Mongo's right. We're going to beat Zelina Vega. This is Zelina's first match since she was called over from Raw. And instead of giving her some kind of momentum, they beat her. This is another match that could have ended in disqualification. Or they could have ended in a count out. Or they could have switched the opponent to Alba Fire and had her beat Alba Fire. Or they could have given her literally anybody else to beat so that she could have some momentum. Instead, however, they're going to put the screws to Zelina now. This is weird. It's really weird booking to debut Zelina with a new theme, a new presentation, and then beat her immediately. I don't get it. And I'm going to bring his name up again. We were told Vince was doing stuff like this. You would repackage somebody and then beat them immediately. But that's happened numerous times since Triple H took over. Road Dogg is now the lead writer on SmackDown, right? So he's the guy we have to blame for as garbage as this show is. Anyway, it was a 3-on-1 situation, so Zelina was outnumbered. Whatever. Also, pause. Chelsea Green was supposed to slap Zelina Vega at one point in this match. And she whiffed the slap. She missed completely. It was funny because Zelina continued to sit there and wait for the slap to happen. and then she did it, and she kind of whiffed it again, if we're being honest. Oh, Chelsea. She's a funny one, dog. She's a very, very humorous young lady. Okay. Next, Braun Strowman defeated Jacob Fatu by disqualification, which, of course, is their way of protecting Braun Strowman for some reason. Braun Strowman earlier in the night told LA Knight that This match was a number one contenders match for the U.S. title as ordered by Nick Aldis, who was not present for this evening for some reason. So Jacob Fatu and Braun Strowman had a really long match, way too long. And it wasn't, the car crash that their Saturday Night Main Event match was, so it wasn't all that fun. Jacob Fatu was in some kind of trouble when Braun Strowman showed up. When Solo showed up and attacked Braun Strowman. Then LA Knight came out to help Braun Strowman. Afterwards, Jacob Fatu pitched a bitch, told Solo Sikoa to mind his own business. So they're still building Jacob Fatu versus Solo, which, okay, I guess that's going to be the match. I'm fine with that idea. You got Tama Tonga stuck in the middle. Like, who is he going to end up with? The guy who brought him in or the guy who he's been hanging with? That's fine. But next week for the U.S. title is going to be Braun Strowman versus LA Knight. I ain't looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to Braun Strowman matches in 2025. Some people were never looking forward to Braun Strowman matches. I like him as a freak performer, as an attraction. But him wrestling for mid-card belts, do we really need that? I think he's a former Intercontinental Champion, though. I think he is. I would look that up if I was a better YouTuber, but I'm not. I am who I am. So, LA Knight stuck with the same people over and over again. At least they did not go with Braun Strowman versus LA Knight for WrestleMania. I feared that they would. I feared that they would, but they decided, nope, we're going to do it on SmackDown next week. And you know what? That is fine. The opening match on the show was Damian Priest and Jimmy Uso versus Shinsuke Mitamura and Damian Priest. And I'm not even going to act like I sat and watched this match. I really didn't. There's too many guys in this match I don't care about. I saw the finish, though. Nakamura got pinned with a chokeslam. Jimmy Uso actually showed Jay how to jump over the top ropes in this match, too. Anyway, Drew McIntyre attacked Damian Priest after the match, beat him up, cut a promo on him later. Says he only tells the truth, and he called Damian Priest an emo vulture. So they're still trying to keep that thing running. I don't care. I don't care about this, unfortunately. I know a lot of people are very upset about Drew McIntyre's booking. He was the wrestler of the year last year for the most part. He really did a good job. And this road to WrestleMania has not served him well. But this is what, this is the kind of stuff that happens. There was a tweet, a very popular tweet, about most random WrestleMania matches. And a lot of people was posting Drew McIntyre versus Baron Corbin, or Dean Ambrose versus Baron Corbin, or Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. Like, where did these matches come from? It's like people forgot that those matches happened. And, for good reason, because that's just mid-card filler stuff. That's what this is. This is mid-card filler. People are going to go to the bathroom during this match. And that does a disservice to both guys, because I do like both guys. I just don't care about this feud. Damian Priest has not been interesting since his singles push began. Actually, he hasn't been interesting since Judgment Day. We kicked the edge out of Judgment Day, if we're being honest. It's, I don't know. Something's not clicking with Damian Priest. And again, I was a fan of him in NXT. Something's not clicking now. And for Drew McIntyre, this is a huge step back. He went from feuding with CM Punk to feuding with Damian Priest. It's a huge step back. But, sometimes guys have to take a step back. But this is going to be a match that in 10 years, people are going to be like, holy hell, why did they do that? Much like when you see, Finn Balor versus Lashley at WrestleMania. You're going to be like, what? Like, yeah, this is that kind of match. It's there. They put some time into it. Like, they really did build up, the Demon versus Bobby Lashley, and then Lashley got squashed in 42 seconds. And I remember I wanted to throw my TV when that happened. I literally wanted to pitch the TV out of the window. But it is what it is. I lived through it because I liked Finn Balor. But that's what this match is. This is a random WrestleMania match that's, I guess, supposed to elevate Damian Priest, but it hasn't been doing him any favors. I don't think they've even had a promo segment against each other yet. Are they going to? Does it matter? It's just been a lot of brawling and generic shit. So it's a generic throwaway match. Look, these SmackDowns have not been good. They've actually been quite terrible in terms of content and in terms of length. Yes, they're 3 hours, but they're not a fun 3 hours to sit through. You know, there's no... I swear I miss fun segments. Even if they were bad, you could laugh at how bad they were, and you could share how bad they were. Like another thing that I saw on Twitter that I thought was fun, and I'm going to bring up right here. I saw two things. Two tweets. One, and there was the two most popular tweets I saw all day. One was people talking about how cringe John Cena was in 2010 with the Raw general manager, you know, the computer general manager, and how terrible this time was. Oh, John Cena was rolling around on the ground. He was in there with, I forgot who, maybe it was Sheamus, who was the champion or something. This is bright orange Cena, by the way. And then the second most popular one I saw all night was Big Purple Cena in the ring telling The Rock to blow him the very next year in 2011. And I was like, you know what? And the interesting bit is, one of them is saying this is the worst era of WWE from 2010 to 2021. Everything was trash. Everybody was trash. Cena was terrible. I'm so glad he turned heel now. And then the other one was like, I love this stuff. This was so much fun. This was the best era for John Cena, one of the best eras for WWE. I was so excited for the match with The Rock. And you look at how polarizing the fans are. That, you know, and maybe because I think Fadeaway Media was the one who posted the Big Purple Cena. And he's a very popular account on Twitter. I don't know who posted the other one. I don't remember. But these were the two most popular tweets, and they're about some shit that was 15 years ago. You know? And SmackDown was on the air as that was happening. And I know that it wasn't on the air in the United States, but people were posting clips so you could see stuff happening. People would much rather talk about John Cena blowing a pinwheel in a feud with The Rock in 2011 than talk about SmackDown today. People would much rather talk about John Cena being furious at the Raw general manager, who is literally a laptop, in 2010 than talk about wrestling today. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? But that's the world we're living in. You can have a mediocre, you can have a really, really bad product. People can enjoy at least galvanizing how bad the product is. And I see the John Cena 2010 clip a lot. You know, I see bad stuff a lot. People will go and cherry pick something that's really bad. The big dog segment between Corbin and Roman, where the big guy came out dressed as a dog or something like that. Or the dog food segment. And they'll talk about how bad these things were or how cringe they were. Of course, they'll ignore all the other stuff that might have been good around that same time, but they want to focus on the negatives. That's how people are. And I've seen people post, you know, positive things out of context without realizing how bad those other things are. But people can galvanize around something that's really good and that's really bad. When something is mid, like mediocre, to the point where you don't even remember what occurred 3 hours later, then you're not putting together a good product, you know? Sometimes the best thing to do is to try. Like sometimes, like when you listen to like albums, I like relating things to other things. When I started listening to like whole albums, like I was never a guy who listens to only the singles. I want to hear the album cuts too, because sometimes the album cuts are the best part. But if you tell me this was a great album and I remember no songs on it, I'm not going to take your word for it. You know, like, no, a great album has, the singles are dope, but also the album cuts are also dope. You know, if I don't remember anything about the album cuts, then I'm probably not going to remember the album at all. And that's what a lot of these Raws and SmackDowns have been, where there's nothing you can poke out of there and be like, you know what, this is a standout segment, and it doesn't involve the main event guys. Like, there's huge segments that involve fucking John Cena. Everybody's gonna remember everything John Cena does, right? From the moment he stepped into the company till today, there's people out there watching every second of every moment of John Cena's career because he's over. He's a superstar. But guess what? There's 300 other people on the roster. And you're not doing anything of note with these people. And that's a problem. They did such a huge angle with John Cena that it's clear everybody wants to see what the outcome of that is going to be, how The Rock is going to factor in. Everybody wants to see what Roman is doing. That stuff is obvious. It's the rest of the card that's looking lumpy and messy. And it looks like it's going to be a bunch of multiple man matches from what it looks like. But, it is what it is. You can't really complain about it. The whole thing with me is there's a lot of talent on this roster. A whole lot of talent. They're not getting much of a chance. And there's not much you can do about it because, one guy is in charge and that one guy is picking and choosing. There was another tweet, I want to talk about this too, that it involves SmackDown. That somebody was posting all the highlights of Carmelo Hayes in NXT. And he managed to see it. And he even dissed himself by saying, a damn homie in high school was you was the man, homie. And kind of put a laughing emoji, showing that, he's been doing nothing but losing ever since he came to NXT. Since he came from NXT. And that actually is what forms my suspicion about what's going on with Tiffany. Why, Lyra Valkyria has been made the Intercontinental Champion, but she lost to Bayley in the middle of the ring clean. Weird decisions like that. Such as those. And, it can't be helped. Again, but I'm not going to stop beating the drum that Triple H does not view the young talent or the newer talent with any reverence. He doesn't care about them at all. He wants to focus on the guys who are already there. And a lot of those guys are 1 foot out already, which is what makes the show so boring. Is Punk is not on TV every week. Roman's not on TV every week. Cena's not on TV every week. Cody's not on TV every week. Cody doesn't even do anything. If he does show up, he might show up to talk, and that's it. And the same thing with Seth Rollins. They don't do anything of note. And when you have so many of your top guys showing up every other week, once every 2 months, or something like that, you need to have your younger guys in position to carry the show. But they're only in position to have 2 to 3 segment matches, and that's it. They're not being positioned to be like, hey, when Roman's not here and Punk's not here, you're the guy. It doesn't feel like that. Even if that's the idea, even with Gunther, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like, okay, Cena's not here, Punk's not here, Gunther's the man. So we're going to build this show around Gunther. It doesn't even feel like that because he barely does anything on these shows. So where do we get to, the rest of the card filling out? Because all of your top guys barely show up, barely do anything. So the show is populated with mostly mid-carders. So you wasted the John Cena heel turn because it was thrown in a void. It's again going to boost at least one of those nights, but what about the other night? And then you have the New Day turn and the Naomi turn. These were big angles. They should have been anyway. But it still doesn't feel like there's any real push, any real oomph being done to these stories. They feel lackadaisical. They feel lackluster. And the show is suffering because of it. Now, let's talk about this roast of WrestleMania thing before we leave out of here. Because it's been a lot of talking about this. I don't really care about it. I don't think we're going to be able to see it. I don't think it'll be televised or anything. It seems like it's going to be like some kind of private event. It's just another excuse for TKO to sell overinflated tickets. The guy who is leading the roast, the comedian, his name is Tony Hinchcliffe. Tony Hinchcliffe apparently is the gentleman who made the joke about Puerto Rico. And I had to go and get refreshed on what the joke was. So this is back from October of 2024. It says he called Puerto Rico an island of floating garbage. And another joke was, these Latinos, they love making babies. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside just like they did to our country. Now, he is a quote-unquote MAGA comedian who has a podcast that, apparently has pissed a lot of people off. So, it was kind of a rough joke, I suppose. It was a funny one. I'm not gonna lie, it was a funny joke. I'm not so sure that it was about Puerto Ricans. I know the whole floating island of garbage thing was the Puerto Rico joke, but the regular Latino joke about how they just come inside, like they come into the country, that was funny. But I'm one that I don't like roasts. I really don't. But I found that one to be funny because I am offensive humor is what I grew up with. Grew up with Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and all these kinds of guys. You can't be squeamish listening to them. But then again, we live in an era where there's quote unquote MAGA comedians. So that's what this guy is. He apparently is a MAGA comedian. But he has a popular podcast that a lot of people talk about. I'm not that familiar with him. But, most famously in the wrestling space, he upset Ric Flair. Now, there's a lot of social media sites, websites or whatever, that incorrectly stated that he made jokes about Ric Flair. As far as I can read, that is not what occurred. I don't know how it was edited, but from what I was able to ascertain, the guys on the podcast, Tony Hinchcliffe and whatever guy was on the podcast, they were making fun of an amateur wrestling coach. And the amateur wrestling thing, it triggered Rick because Ric Flair was an amateur wrestler. So he kind of put those two things together and got really emotional and walked off. And then I think some of the wrestling websites were like, oh, he was making fun of Reed and all this kind of stuff, which I don't think happened. But who knows? But that's really what most of these people know this guy from is pissing off and upsetting Ric Flair and the joke about Puerto Rico, which, I get is right at the line of maybe too far. But, some guys like to push the envelope. I'm sure if it was a roast of WrestleMania featuring Bill Burr, nobody would give a shit. But because it's, Tony Hinchcliffe is a whole, this is a bad idea. This is the worst idea. He's going to say something racist. It's like, he might. It fucking might be interesting then. Again, I grew up with comedians, Dave Chappelle, and that was the good old days, though, where you can make fun of everybody. You can make fun of black people and white people and gays and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't taken out of context, and nobody took anything a comedian said seriously. But now everything a comedian says is a political statement. When that's not the case, it might not even in any way reflect how the comedian really feels about a person or a subject. But now you have to be essentially a propagandist. This is what Bill Burr has become over time. Is you have to intentionally make jokes only about a certain group. So who knows? But now Tony Hinchcliffe is going to be, participating in the roast of WrestleMania. It's a big event for WWE because I know this Kill Tony podcast is pretty popular, I suppose. Especially in the MAGA sphere. But, all these people seemingly exist in the MAGA sphere, but I don't know that much about them. Because, I don't really care about people that much. But this is why so many of the fans are against it. They don't like the idea because, why would you have this MAGA comedian doing MAGA comedy at your wrestling event? It's like it's a private event. I don't know if it's going to be broadcast. I don't think so. They may change their mind and decide to broadcast it. But it seems like it's going to be just one of those events for WrestleMania that's going to occur where you can either go or you cannot go. Much like the Hall of Fame and the Undertaker's one-man show and all that kind of stuff. Either you can go and enjoy it or you cannot go. But also, there's going to be wrestlers there. From my understanding, I think Sami Zayn is going to perform. He does stand-up comedy. The Miz is going to be there. Braun Strowman's going to be there. Paul Heyman's going to be there. So there's going to be some wrestling personalities there. I'm not sure who else is going to show up. There's no way of knowing. But there's a lot of people talking about this thing. And it's just another way of WWE branching out and doing more. Like when they sponsored Mick Foley's, comedy tour for a short time there. And they actually only posted one show, which I thought they were going to post all the shows, but I guess they decided not to. But again, this is one of those things where I don't look at it like it's a political thing, but the anti-Trump people do. I look at it like WWE gets involved with popular podcasts. That's how I see it. It's one of those, like, my favorite podcasts are not anything WWE is going to be involved with. I barely listen to Joe Rogan. I do listen to Joe Rogan, but barely. It has to be somebody on there worth talking about. I don't really listen to comedy podcasts, so I don't really listen to this. Either I'm listening to history podcast or something like that. So this doesn't really affect me one way or the other. But for a lot of the politically minded people, they just look at him like he's a MAGA comedian and WWE is MAGA and they're doing all this MAGA shit. And I'm like, okay, but for average people, it's just kind of like normal stuff. You crack jokes about things that, jokes sometimes are brutal and sometimes they're offensive. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they land people in prison, but it is what it is, man. From my understanding, it was Tony Hinchcliffe's idea. He's a wrestling fan. Andrew Schultz is another guy. He was on WWE TV recently as well. He's another one of these MAGA comedians who, WWE worked with recently, and those same people flipped the lid on him too. What a lot of wrestling fans don't understand is not everybody lives in a bubble, and not everybody knows who these people are, so they're not coming into these things with prejudged ideas about who Andrew Schultz is or about who Tony Hinchcliffe is. They don't operate within a political bubble where they know everything about these guys. And some of them just come across like painfully normal guys who sometimes say offensive things, which is like 99% of males. It's just like Joe Rogan. It's like people act like he's some kind of huge political guy. Like Joe Rogan asks pertinent questions about tough subjects that people don't want asked. And sometimes people say things that other people don't want you to say. And that doesn't mean that these people are MAGA or right wing or anything like that. It just might be that they're controversial. They stir in the pot, but they don't take it that way. And I'm not one to argue against them. I'm just saying that I don't look at this like it's going to be some kind of huge disaster like people on the internet is saying. There's people saying oh, there's going to be wrestlers that are going to quit because he's going to go up there and start doing race jokes. It's I'm almost certain WWE is going to give him some kind of outline of, hey, certain things, let's not get into it. Sami Zayn's supposed to be there. Heyman's going to be there. So I don't know what his shtick is. Again, I don't know anything about Tony Hinchcliffe, but please lay off the Jews. Lay off the Palestine stuff. All the political bullshit. Just kind of lay low on that kind of shit because we never know what kind of crowd we're going to have. Again, it's WrestleMania weekend. It's going to be packed with normies. You don't want to one-shot some normie with a joke that pisses them off and ruins their weekend. You don't really want to do that. You want to keep it fun. You want to keep it light. And let's have fun with this thing. And that's kind of how I view it. And sometimes, even though a person is controversial, that doesn't mean that they're controversial all the time. People turn it on, turn it off. They know how to work the audience that they're in front of. And I would imagine this guy knows how to work the audience he's going to be in front of. And since I'm not going to be able to see it, and I probably wouldn't watch it, even if I could watch it, I don't give a fuck. So that's that. And so let's wrap this thing up. SmackDown, not very good. None of these SmackDowns have been very good. Triple H does not know how to book the mid-card, and now even the main eventers are boring. Cena's boring. Cody's boring. Roman's boring. All this stuff's boring. It's not There's no spice to it. Again, there's no mid-card to speak of. Everything's dragging on in a very sluggish manner. And the card outside of Cody versus Cena is looking kind of weak. And that's just being honest. And we're 4 weeks away from WrestleMania. And I'm really only excited for Cody and Cena. And I was interested in that before the heel turn. So the heel turn didn't make me more excited, which is sad. Because you would think it should have. It should have easily made everybody more excited. But what I think is the issue is people have, if Vince was doing this is how much fun it would be. But it's not Vince doing it. It's Triple H. And Triple H is a boring booker. So, like, share, subscribe. Be sure to do that. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why these sleazy guys